Hello everyone, and thank you so much for coming. It truly is my dream and passion to bring light to the subject that is so close to my heart and that has been misunderstood for way, way too long. Learning disabilities. In particular, ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. My name is Nadine Schumont, and I am dyslexic, and I am ADHD. These are my superpowers. I'm a licensed Davis facilitator, and I own and operate Picture Perfect Learning Solutions. I also like to call myself a dyslexic specialist. Now I have to stop and explain why I like to call myself a dyslexic specialist when it actually does not even exist. Well, it doesn't exist in the dictionary anyway. If you go to the dictionary and look up a dyslexic specialist, you won't find it, and if you do, please let me know. When I looked it up in Google, it did not exist. So I decided to make my own picture for what a dyslexic specialist is, and for me, it is a person who is dyslexic and is a specialist. Guess what? That's me. I am a dyslexic specialist, and I specialize in helping other people like me understand and take responsibility for their learning styles, or what some might call learning disabilities. Tonight, I would like to set 2 goals for this Facebook Live. My first goal is I would like to hear from you. I cannot promise that I will see all your comments while we are talking, but I can promise to review all your comments afterwards and to make sure to get back to you if needed. My second goal is to share my story and how I was impacted by a learning disability. My hope is that by hearing my story, it might help someone else out there who lives with or is impacted by someone living with a learning disability. So let's get started. So when you hear the words learning disability, learning disorder, dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, what do you think? What comes to your mind? As a parent, I can imagine there would be fear and anxiety, panic, loss of control, not sure where to turn for help, so many questions. And in my experience, I couldn't find a lot of help, not real help. As a child with a learning disability, it could be many things. Some children don't even realize they don't have a learning disability and don't see that. They just think, I can't do that. They can do that, but I can't do that. Some may be directly impacted and could have depression. They could close up to others. They could close up to their family. They could act out. They could be out of control. As a teenager with a learning disability, it could be seen as overachiever, mischief behavior, blocks out help when possible, excels in one area maybe, and can't maintain self-control in other areas. For teenagers, it could turn to depression. You may even see a higher use of drugs and alcohol. As an adult with a learning disability, it could be an overachiever is a popular one for adults. Power trips, you definitely see that. A lot of people get excellent at doing one thing, and that's where they stay. People put acts on to cover up things they cannot do. We've been considered lazy because we can't seem to get the nerve up to go and try new things. There's also people who do not know that they have learning disabilities. And for those people, it can be very frustrating, depressing, fearful, and create a lot of anxiety because what do? If you don't know you have something wrong, but you know that you're not like everyone else, where do you turn? Tonight, I would like to invite you to listen to my journey of living with a learning disability and what that has meant for me and how my learning disabilities are my superpowers. Now, thinking back for me when I was a child, like many who were born in the 70s, a learning disability wasn't recognized then, at least not where I grew up. And I grew up in Newfoundland. I was a middle child. We lived in a small town. There were 5 children. So I felt like I was double trouble. I was always on the go. As a small child in school, I can remember when I was very young not being able to sit still. I couldn't pay attention or concentrate. I remember not being able to get through one day without causing some incident in disorder or preoccupying myself or the others around me. Both in school, in home, and in my social life, this occurred. I can remember being at school from kindergarten to grade 3. Teachers would find activities to keep me busy. These activities did not include other children. It was more of a way to keep me settled down. I guess a way to make me feel useful. And I think the important part was to allow other children to learn. Well, this became a very popular coping skill for me over my lifetime. Helping others became one of my main sources of coping. In time, this coping skill would define my life. I would become an overachiever in all aspects of my life. Another coping skill as a small child and throughout my childhood, youth, that I can remember is I was busy. You guys, I was so busy. I tell people I was like the Tasmanian devil. I'd come into a room, have a discussion, and leave, and I swear things would just kind of float back down because I would spin. There's so many ideas and so many things going on. I remember as a small child, I learned to make people laugh and stay busy to keep out of trouble. So this became one of my first coping skills that I mastered. They say that 1 in every 5 children has a learning disability. And out of those children with learning disabilities, 80% are dyslexic. I can imagine in a classroom of 20, if 1 in every 5 have a learning disability, we have 4 children in one class that has a learning disability and potentially have dyslexia and possibly have ADHD, ADD, dyspraxia, or dyscalculia. They can have a combination of any. I always find it funny with these words because they're still words that will make my throat giggle. One of the common things with dyslexics is sometimes we can struggle with saying our words, especially when it's a difficult word. So let's try to imagine that teacher and what that teacher must have felt. They had 20 children when 4 of them needed to work and needed to learn in a completely different manner than they do in the schools that we teach, in the standard schools we teach today. For me as a child, this became a problem. Because they didn't recognize learning disabilities at that time, I can remember all my report cards having the same message. If Nadine would only sit still. If Nadine could learn to pay attention. Or if Nadine would just concentrate on something. Or if Nadine would just apply herself. This underlining message I received was, if Nadine was just a good student, it would all work out. If Nadine could be a good person and listen and behave, it would all work out. So these are the memories of my school-age years. As I got older, school became more difficult. I started to fall behind, but not just in school, you guys. Like I started to fall behind in life. So one of the things that I've been mentioning that I want to clarify is I've been saying that I have coping skills. And I want to explain what a coping skill is. Coping skills for children with a learning disability is a way which we create to get out of what we don't want to do because it causes us confusion. One of the most common characteristics of a learning disability is that we have a lower threshold for confusion. That means that when we get confused, and we get confused very quickly, when we get confused, we also get disoriented. When we get disoriented, we lose our place, and then we try to recover. Now, this process only takes a matter of seconds, but every time this process happens without the proper tools and understanding what is happening, we continue to take baby steps back while the rest of the world is moving forward. So I just want to pause here and just give a picture of that. So every day, a child with a learning disability goes to school. And if the child with the learning disability does not understand their learning disability and doesn't have their tools, so every day, all throughout the day, there's constantly little confusions that happen. And little confusions that cause disorientation. And disorientation causes us to lose our place. And then we get frustrated. Then we have anxiety. So we do this little thing backwards, and the rest of the school, so we're going backwards this way, and the rest of the students are going that way. And this happens all the time. So we're constantly feeling like we're left behind. Now let's take a few moments, and I want to look at how all this impacts at a school environment. We fall behind. We become the butt of the jokes. We get overlooked because it takes us too long to do something correctly. We become difficult to relate to because we are not at the same level as the other children. We reach out to other children who are struggling for support in numbers. We impact children that are not struggling because we need a distraction. We love them. We impact our families and our siblings because we need a distraction. The more distractions a person with a learning disability does, the more they do not have to confront their disability. I want to share an example of this. So your child is learning to tie their laces. They try and they try and they try and they retry. And you show them over and over and over again. And you think that continuing to show them by example that you're teaching them and they will be able to do it one day they'll break through and they'll do it. But in fact, many children actually cannot do up their laces for many years. And it isn't because they don't know how. The one thing that we do not do, but we need to do with our children, especially those living with a learning disability, is we have to stop showing them over and over again. I can guarantee you that the child with a learning disability, who is a picture thinker, already understands the process of how to tie their laces. What they need to do is take the process from their minds and actually do it. So, what is it that stops a child from completing this process? I believe it is fear. It's fear from doing something wrong, especially at a school age level. This seems so simple, but for so many it is not. Every time a child tries to tie their lace and is corrected by someone else, they receive a message that they were wrong and that someone else was correct. Even though many would say that is not a negative message to help your children by continuing to tie their laces. But it can be taken as a foundational belief that they cannot do it on their own. Throughout any given day, there are many challenges that happen like this for people who live with learning disabilities. They get confused as someone comes along and rescues them. The underlying fear becomes a handicap and stops them from moving forward. This then becomes a very creative way of coping, because now they're looking for people to make final decisions or approvals in their lives. I can remember not too long ago in myself as an adult recognizing that I could not make simple decisions like what was for dinner. My decisions were based on what others wanted because I didn't know how to handle rejection that someone else didn't want what I wanted. You see, I learned as a young child that the one way of coping for me was to make sure that everyone else was okay. Now, some people would say that there's a lot of people that have this issue, and you're absolutely correct. There are a lot of people pleasers. But multiply that with a learning disability and you have an underlying fear that handicaps us from making final decisions for moving on our own. All right, it's time for a breather because I've said a lot of information and I see a lot of messages there. So I'm going to check in and we're just going to do a review on what we covered so far. So far we know that when we get confused quickly and we have a lower threshold of confusion. Okay, so we know that about people with learning disabilities. The constant confusion and coping puts us behind and creates more confusion, and now we have frustration. Okay, so one of the other terms that I used so far were picture thinkers, and I wanted to take a moment to explain to you what a picture thinker is. We are picture thinkers. I am a picture thinker, meaning we do not hear words and letters. We think and see images. For me, it is like having a filing cabinet of images. When I hear a word I do not recognize, my brain will start the process of going through my images until it finds an image that matches the word. If I know that word, great, we're done. We can move on to the next word or the next statement. But when a picture thinker does not know what that word looks like and does not have any meaning for it, we do not have a picture for that word and we get confused. On top of that, as we get older and more is expected of us, it becomes too embarrassing to ask what that means. Or that is what I have experienced. But after I understood my learning disability, that was my first problem that went away. Now, I nicely stop people, of course, in the middle, a lot of times, of their conversation, but I usually try to wait till the end. I'll ask them what that word was that I didn't understand. I will make sure that I'm paying attention. I will get oriented. And I listen, and then I create a picture while they are describing the word to me. And then that word gets filed. I'm creating a picture in my mind, and then by doing that, I'm removing the confusion. Interesting fact. Did you know that picture thinkers see 32 pictures per second? And we are also why people. We are obsessed with why. I love that about me. I think that's one of my superpowers. Okay, so now, can you imagine when we see images at 32 images per second, how fast we can get confused if something happens that we don't understand? It can be like this, like instantly. I have this picture in my head that when I get confused over a word, it's like me tripping up when I'm walking. So if I'm tripping up, then I need to stop and I have to figure out what word that is. And that's when I usually stop whatever it is I'm doing, find the word, and get a picture for that word. So, life. You just never know where you'll end up. Well, that was me. Before I knew it, I was on my way back to school at the age of 47. Determined to figure out what I had always felt was missing and what I needed in order to get my life back in control. Knowledge would be the answer. School had worked for everyone else, or at least that's what I believed. In 2017, I started at King's University in London, Ontario to gain my certificate in thanatology. This is a study of loss, grief, and bereavement. Surely I had felt all three in my life, and I had a strong calling to help others in this field. Now, during my first term, I found myself struggling to keep up with my studies. Again, I was putting in the work that was needed times two. I mean, I was in school part-time. I was working at school full-time and had a tutor. And every support that the school offered, I had. But I continued to struggle to comprehend the information and put them back into words so that my results would show what I was learning. Going back to school as a mature student, now understanding that I was dyslexic and ADHD, I expected things to be different. That did not happen, and things weren't any different. I thought that if I had a diagnosis, that going back to school was going to be easy because now everybody would just know. They would just figure it out. I don't know. I guess I thought they were going to tell me how to do it. I don't know. By this time, I had exerted all my options with the disability department at King's. You guys, I had a tutor. I had a support group. I had software to help me read. I had software to help me do writing. I had software to help me edit. I had software to talk back to me. But yet, I still found myself, again, emotionally and academically struggling in school. Determined to complete what I had started, I decided to look outside the normal aids available and found The Gift of Dyslexia by Ron Davis. I immediately downloaded the book on Audible and began my research. The next thing I remember, I met with Tracy, my Davis facilitator, and booked my week to complete my 30-hour Davis Dyslexia Corrections program. A program that I would come to learn would put me on a completely different path in my life. For me as an adult, being dyslexic and ADHD, it hasn't been easy. It has been a struggle. I found it difficult to have confidence in my life in everything. I felt as if it didn't matter how hard I worked or tried, I still got things wrong. I had no control over my emotions and would go from calm to crazy in seconds, I swear. Or at least that's how it felt for me. I would struggle to do things without confusion. That would lead to frustration and anxiety. This did not just impact me, but it also impacted my family and the people closest to me. Spending a week with my Davis facilitator, Tracy, and completing the Davis Corrections program, my life totally changed. My confidence continues to improve every day. So now we're going to get to the silly stuff that I might even get a little teary-eyed because it's crazy. I can now read out loud when people are around and if no one's around. I couldn't do that before I was 47. Actually, I couldn't do that before I was 48. Even doing what I'm doing right now would not be happening. I could not break down words and understand that all words, every single word has 3 parts to it. You guys, if you want to know the 3 parts to a word, contact me because it just blows your mind when you actually understand what you're actually reading. And now let's talk about my reading abilities. I'm not even sure what to say here other than I thought I could read before. Before, I was just going through the words. I was what they call a skimmer. I would read a book, and if I didn't know a word, that I didn't know it, but at the time that word would cause a big blank in my mind. So then my creative, brilliant brain would then take that word and would determine a calculation based on all the other words, what that word must mean. And you know what, 90% of the time that worked. But there's a hell of a lot in life I've missed out on because I couldn't understand what that missing word was. And that doesn't happen anymore. The biggest thing for me is that I'm 49, actually about to turn 50 this week. Woohoo! And I know my ABCs. I don't know that song. Like that song's just a song. It's just a song. Now I know I say my ABCs backwards, forwards, and I know every letter for what the letter is. You guys, I looked for a long time to get help. And all I found was more labels and more coping skills and no solutions. The Davis program gave me knowledge and skills I never knew I had before and I never believed I could have. It was completely worth it. Looking back now and knowing what I now know and understand, it is so much more than a program about a learning disability. It changed my life. I could not imagine what this program could have done for me as a child. You get like, so this is where you keep going, right? So I'd like to take a moment and summarize what we've covered so far. All right, so we have people with learning disabilities. We're different. We're so different, and I'm so proud of it. We get confused quickly, and we have a lower threshold for confusion. We create coping skills to get around that confusion. The constant confusion and coping skills put us behind, creating more confusion and results in frustration and anxiety. We are picture thinkers. Because we are picture thinkers, we must learn in a way that allows us to build pictures in our minds. Without this, we will struggle. Now let me list some gifts that we have. And this is not the list. This is just a few lists because everybody's got a life and wants to move on, right? We can successfully do more than one thing at a time. I'm like Superwoman when it comes to that stuff. I'm like great, and I love watching other people do the same thing. Some of our coping skills can lead to great talents when understood. There is an answer out there, and we can become responsible for our superpowers so that we can learn in the same environment as everybody else. All right, I love this one. We see images in our minds like they're happening at the very moment, meaning we can escape from reality anytime we want. You guys, I go to the beach a few times a day. I love it. Anywhere I can escape to. I know that some people would say daydreaming is not good when you're a kid and you're in class, but it is a gift, and I love that gift. So here's the good news. There is help, and with this help, you too can remove the disability, but retain the superpower. By learning and understanding what, why, and how our learning disabilities impact us, we can begin to understand the one thing that has been holding us back and can in fact be the very thing that allows us to leap forward. You guys, I'm backing up. I want to say this sentence again. We can begin to understand how the one thing that's been holding us back in life can be, in fact, the very thing that allows us to leap forward. As I said in the beginning, my goal tonight was to hear from you. I can see that there are a lot of comments, and thank you so much. I'm so excited to read them all. I will be reviewing the comments and determine what subject is for next if I do another live and talk about learning disabilities. And I'll also get back to anybody who had direct questions. My second goal was to share my story, hoping that it would help others to bring awareness to the many different learning abilities out there. I truly hope by sharing my story that I have done just that. And for anyone out there who is struggling and wants to understand learning disabilities more, please know there is a real solution out there, and there are answers to our question, why? As I continue in this field, I wish to build awareness around learning disabilities and what that really means, not just labels and not just diagnosis. We understand what it is that is happening to us. When we understand what it is that is happening to us, we can also take responsibility for that action. And that's huge. The responsibility part is the most important part, you guys. Bringing support to who has a learning disability or who are directly impacted by someone with a learning disability is my mission. It is the reason I know and understand why I am who I am and why I have superpowers. Lastly, I would like to take a moment to tell you more about the Davis program. Number one, the Davis program is number one. It is number one. It is so much more than a program about flipping your B's and your D's, saying things incorrectly, reading incorrectly, not being able to sit still. We for sure cover all those things and so much more. Everything you have going on, we cover. But this program gave me the tools to also take charge of my life, to understand the way that I think and grow. It taught me how to be proud of my amazing learning abilities. So where can you find a Davis facilitator? Now that's a great question. We are located worldwide. Everywhere. We're everywhere. You can search for us using our international site. www.dyslexia.com, or in Canada at www.daviscanada.org, or you can locate me by visiting my website on www.pictureperfectsolutions.com, or you can just hang out on my Facebook page. We offer a variety of programs that focus on reading, math, attention, which covers ADD and ADHD, and we also have a Young Learners program. Each facilitator has their own incredible story on how they were impacted directly or by someone close to them living with a learning disability. I am sure each one of them would love to share their story with you. You could also do what I do when I found this. So this is my story of how I found Davis. I lost all hope of school. No one could do nothing for me. I went to Google. I put in help for dyslexia. And I looked for the most interesting word that came up that I liked, and it was the gift of dyslexia. And the fact that it called my disability a gift, I chose Ron Davis. And that's what I did. Sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith and jump right in. We're happy to announce that we are now offering the Davis program online due to the social distancing requirements. This gives us the opportunity to help people in the comfort of their own home everywhere. There are no limitations. If anyone would like any more information, please feel free to speak with me directly or send me an email, or I am open to setting up a one-on-one Zoom call. Thank you all. Until next time, I'm Nadine, and there's only one thing that makes, I'm Nadine, and if there's only one thing that makes this whole talk worth it, is that I truly hope that I've offered some hope to people out there that are struggling with learning disabilities. You guys, you don't have to struggle anymore. There's answers. Just reach out. We're here. We'll help. Blessings to you all. Thanks for coming.